And some of the things that you really have to take a look at when you are thinking about what needs to be done. And let's see, let's circulate. Are there, I hope I have my copies. Sorry, I'll get back. Okay. So the first thing that you have to do is, again, narrow down what is that issue of public concern that you're looking at. And really, the focus of our organization is looking at systemic change. We try to identify systemic solutions to the issue. Oh, thank you. To the issue of concern. So really, what are the specific issues? What are the policies? How can we pinpoint what those issues are? And when we do this exercise with high school students, basically we tell the teachers, don't censor the students, when in kind of identifying the issues that they care about, because let's get everything down on paper. Don't censor yourself, because once you get everything down, you can take a step back and look at it, and you will see again the evolution of these cluster groups, and that's very valuable. So, when you're either working in your own community or you're facilitating this project, maybe with some other community groups, just let it be a free flow brainstorm. Second thing is identify resources. And more likely than not, you have much more resources available than you think you do. And so, again, with Joanne and Linda, when I was talking to them, when we were talking about the resources that they were available, it's really important to think outside the box. And for example, the Chamber of Commerce became a crucial resource, obviously, with the Marion County issue. And thinking about, and with the reorganization of county government issue, my understanding is that there was one particular individual who really took a stab, a lawyer who started drafting the original charter. And really this individual had the expertise to put pen to paper to say, okay, if we're going to do a ballot initiative, what is the language going to be? And then the league substantially helped in editing and revising that, but it was someone with the expertise to sit down. So you have to really, if it's a tax issue, is there someone in the community do you have a neighbor who's an accountant? Or someone involved in government that can read things. We deal with a lot of development issues, and so inevitably, we tell our community group, look for someone in your neighborhood who's an engineer, who does environmental background, to look at the plans. Do you know, any, lawyers in the area that do municipal law? Because if it's a zoning issue, they can kind of look at the zoning thing. And oftentimes you have a wealth of resources in your own backyard, and you can find people with expertise in different areas. And really not limiting yourself and thinking about where those resources come from are very important. The next thing is identifying decision makers in the public body. And this is an issue that sometimes is really one of the more difficult things to figure out, is who has the capacity to give you the answer that you're looking for. And is it an administrative person, or is it a public body? Because that makes a big difference. If it's a public body, you have these avenues that we talked about in terms of throwing them out of office or things like that. If it's an administrative person, oftentimes it's a much more difficult job, because a lot of times, and some of you may know this, I'm sure, when you're organizing in your community and say you turn over who's making those decisions, the public officials, now these individuals are public officials. They're kind of on a board that presumably they had an adversarial relationship with, because the public officials weren't being responsive. Who now of that government body is their resource for getting up to speed on the issues? It's staff. So so oftentimes, it's the superintendent, it's the village administrator that now becomes the person that the newly elected public official has to rely on to get up to speed. And that creates kind of a very difficult situation for newly elected public officials, because otherwise, what's their resource? I don't know if any of you have had that interaction happen, but a lot of times we have newly elected public officials call us who are, just kind of like, this is a very strange scenario that I'm in now, because now I won. Now I'm sitting on the dais, and when I'm asking for information, I'm asking for it from the administration that I didn't necessarily trust to begin with. And so then the option becomes, do you do micromanagement and essentially digging out the information yourself, or you trust the information that administration gives you? So that's why you really need to figure out, is it a policy issue or is it an administrative issue? Because if it's an administrative issue, it's in many ways a much more difficult thing to have to be addressed. And if it is a public body issue, a huge portion of our work is helping citizen groups figure out how does that public body make decisions. So going back to the citizen group that wants to repeal the tax increase, the citizen group came to me and said, we're going to collect, the town has about 54,000 people, we're going to collect 6,000 signatures and deliver it to city council and say, repeal the tax. And I said, okay. So you're going to so let's talk this through. So you're going to deliver the petition to the city council, and then what? Well, we're going to have an alderman propose an ordinance to repeal the tax. I said, okay. And then what? That ordinance, that proposal has to go to a committee, and it has to, because that's how this structure of government works. And it's going to go to the finance committee. So let's look up the members of the finance committee. Well, you're dead in the water, because the head of the finance committee is an individual who is staunchly opposed to repealing the tax increase. So the only way you're going to get it through this committee is if you can get these three other individuals to force the chair to get it on the agenda. And so it's talking through those very kind of boring technical issues, but very important strategic issues that you need to do in a campaign, the nuts and bolts. Because the idea of we're going to go out and we're going to, harness civic power to get something done is great. You need it, absolutely. You need to back up what you say, but you also need to be able to be very strategic in how you use people's resources, because you want people to feel good that their efforts are successful. So helping figure out the red tape specifically of how a particular public body works. So the things we listed there, drafting policies, who drafts them? Is there a committee structure? Are there public hearings? If there's a public hearing, what are the rules of procedure related to the public hearing? Next thing is collecting information to educate organizers. And I'm just going to take a second to, part of the work that we did as part of the Midwest Democracy Network is looking at Ohio's open records law and open meetings laws. And being able to access information is crucial, because if you have to be able to back up what you say. A lot of times citizen groups say, we're going to do a petition, or we're going to do an open letter to whatever public body it is calling for a reform. And then they call us up and they say, well, will you edit it? And they have all these statements, kind of a statements of grievances, but they don't have any documentation of where they got that information from. And, so what we say, it's really important, one, to protect yourself legally, and two, to give yourself credibility in the community that say, taxes have increased by X percentage point and documented from the city's own files or whatever public body you're dealing with. Documentation is very important. From taking a look at Ohio public records laws, I got to say I was really pleased that the enforcement provisions were outstanding as compared to other states. But it was disconcerting to learn that there's no set time frame by which public bodies have to respond to a public records request here in the state, which I was shocked by, because that's a problem.